I expended about $42,000 for my home equity line of credit. I wasn't thrilled about doing that, but that's what was needed to keep the Landmark project moving. My son Douglas was going to Cal State Northridge. I said, hey Doug, let's go down to 3701 West 119th Street in Hawthorne and let's check out the neighborhood, the old Beach Boys neighborhood of the Wilson family.
Although they weren't really surfers, the Beach Boys were young Americans.
The Beach Boys were on my mind because I had seen the A&E biography. Obviously, I knew a lot of their very famous music. Didn't know a whole lot about their background or anything. I would say that A&E biography was the real start of my interest. That was just an incredibly fascinating story. And I developed a lot of interest in the Beach Boys to the point that I knew what the address was of the old home. And so much of their history started right there in Hawthorne. Back in the 50s and 60s, Hawthorne's almost like the American Graffiti movie, There was the main drag, Hawthorne Boulevard. Kids would go up and down Hawthorne Boulevard in their cars. They were the hangout places. There were a bowling lane and a pizza place. And this was the environment in which the Beach Boys grew up. They weren't born wealthy. They came from our class, had lots of the same experiences we all did growing up, and they sang about it. So my perception of what the home would have looked like, it would be a home very similar to what I grew up in. We drove to where the Beach Boys' house used to be, and I knew immediately what had happened. The house wasn't there. When I realized that the Wilson home was taken for the freeway, it was just one of deep disappointment. But, what was done was done. The house was gone. Between the time in May of 2003 when I made that visit and then September of 2003, this idea occurred to me. Why can't we have a national landmark? Went into my home office, got on the computer, and there was a brianwilson.com website, and I made a post. I said, we all know that the home of the Beach Boys in Hawthorne, California is gone, but wouldn't it be cool if we could put a national landmark or a landmark of some type, an historic landmark? I let it go for a few minutes, hit the refresh button. I got a bunch of responses, and I got more and more and more. When I got those reactions, I said, well, okay, let's do it. I, at first, was happy to get letters from fans, and those were appreciated, and I used those in my application. But you need to get your letters of support from really influential people. I got a letter of support eventually from the Rock Hall of Fame. One person that's really prominent was Dick Clark. So he was a person I contacted, and I got a letter of support from him. So I think that made a big difference. I submitted the landmark application, and they said, we have received your response, we accept it. You're invited to come appear before us, and we would like to hear a presentation about the Beach Boys. On the morning of the presentation, if anything gave me any nerves, it was that a couple TV stations, set up their cameras to witness this presentation. And I had a huge community of Beach Boys fans watching what I was doing.
Okay. First up, Harry Jarnagan.
So my presentation, as I was making it, the eye was not on me, it was on the presentation itself. So I stepped back from the podium, just kind of looking around, and here's this lady from the executive staff of the Historic Resources Commission, and she was singing along with the song that was going on the presentation itself. And so I kind of felt that I had captured the imagination of the commission. I ask you to think about where it all began, 3701 West 119th Street in Hawthorne. And I ask you for your vote to register this as a State of California historical landmark. When they took their vote, it was unanimous. I just felt we've gotten a big victory right there. We planned to have a dedication. We planned to erect a monument. And so we knew that we had more work to do. Once we had the design determined, we had to come up with a funding plan. And basically it was in two parts. One was to sell bricks on the monument, given that it was a masonry structure. And then the other was to ask for donations. In addition to the other two things I mentioned, I expended about $42,000 for my home equity line of credit. I wasn't thrilled about doing that, but that's what was needed to keep the landmark project moving. But this time, I also now had the support of Scott Wilson. Scott Wilson was the son of Dennis and Carol Wilson. And fortunately for me, Scott was in the construction industry. We set the Friday of the third week of May to have the date for the landmark dedication.
Welcome to the Beach Boys Historical Landmark Dedication.
At one point, at about the midway point, we had the unveiling, and we invited Brian Wilson, Al Jardine, and David Marks to come forward to actually help pull the fabric. The monument was just perfect. I mean, it was new. It kind of had a little golden sheen going with it because all the brass is brand new. You know, Brian standing there, Scott Wilson says, "Hey, Uncle Brian, what do you think?" And Brian says, "I have no words. You know, this is wonderful." And I just welled up with pride. I'm like, wow, this is cool, you know? So it was a big moment.
The Wilson home is gone forever. We will never get it back physically. It was taken for a freeway. But hopefully this monument we have dedicated today will make up for that, keeping the spirit of 3701 West 119th Street and the good vibrations of that incredible place alive forever. Thanks.
In July 2007, I got an email from the administrator of Brothers Records saying that the Beach Boys Brothers Records wanted me to stop fundraising. When I did get that email, I did consult with some attorneys. The attorney said to me that when I used the name of the Beach Boys, okay, that was a trademark, and the attorneys told me that their advice was just to stop. In terms of my motivation for doing the project initially or originally, I would probably have to say I would do it all over again. I think it was the right thing to do. That's an important part of American culture, sitting at that location. Our Elvis fans that go to Graceland, for example, there's now a place for Beach Boys fans to go to and to gain a deeper understanding of what the Beach Boys meant to all of us.